Hola! Today in class, you're going to be taking notes on what I'm going to call Gramática 101, Spanish Grammar 101, los sustantivos, los artículos, y los adjetivos. Your job today is to fill in all the needed information and complete all activities in order to receive credit for today's classwork. You need to be aware as well that there will be some things that I will say that will not be mentioned on the screen. It is in your best interest to make sure that you listen to the entire video. And please call me over if you have questions and to check your work at the end. First off, what are the parts of speech? Un sustantivo es una persona, un lugar, o una cosa, a person, place, or thing. In other words, un sustantivo is what we call a noun in English. Un artículo definido, or a definite article, is how we refer to the word the. We're referring to a specific item or to a specific set of items. Un artículo indefinido is how we say a, an, or some. If I want a pencil or some pieces of paper, it doesn't matter which pencil you give me or which pieces of paper you give me. I just want something much more general. Un adjetivo, or an adjective, describes a noun. The job of an adjective is to describe or modify a noun. And finally, un verbo, or a verb, is the action of a sentence. Today, we'll be focusing on nouns, definite articles, indefinite articles, and adjectives, and we'll make sure that you know how to recognize a verb in Spanish. The first thing you need to be aware of is that los sustantivos en Español, or nouns in Spanish, tienen género. In other words, they have gender. Spanish nouns are either masculine or feminine. The majority of masculine nouns, or sustantivos masculinos, end with the letter O, and the majority of los sustantivos femeninos, or feminine nouns, end with the letter A. Now you need to be aware, of course, that there are irregularities, such as el lápiz, which is a masculine noun, or la mano, which means the hand, and is a feminine noun. And those you're just going to have to try to find and do your best to memorize. However, for the most part, it's going to be in your best interest to try to remember that most masculine nouns can be recognized because they end with the letter O, and most feminine nouns can be recognized because they end with the letter A. Now, what you're going to do is make sure that you look at the vocab sheet you completed for the month of September. You're going to pause the video and write down at least 5 sustantivos masculinos y 5 sustantivos femeninos, 5 masculine nouns and 5 feminine nouns from this list. Once you're done, please restart the video and continue on to continue on. Be aware that this activity does continue a tiny bit onto page 2. You also need to be aware that los sustantivos, or nouns, tienen número. They have number, just like they do in English. They're either singular, talking about one person or thing, or plural, talking about more than one person or thing. If a noun ends with una vocal is how we say a vowel in Spanish, all you do to make it plural is add the letter S. So once again, to make a noun that ends with a vowel, A, E, I, O, or U, plural, all you do is add the letter S. If a noun ends with a consonant, in other words, any other letter, you add the letters ES to make it plural. Now please pause the video again. Use the 10 nouns that you wrote down on la primera página, página una, and change them all to their plural forms following the rules that we just went over. Once you're set, restart the video and move on to los artículos definidos, or definite articles. When we're dealing with los artículos definidos, they need to have the same gender, in other words, masculine and feminine, and number, singular or plural, as the nouns that they're talking about. So, for example, if I want to say the book, I need to say el libro. But if I want to say the books, I need to say los libros. By the same token, if I were talking about the class, a specific class in school, la clase, the classes is las clases. Please write down the masculine and feminine, singular and plural, definite articles. Remember that these are the words we use to say the. Once you're done, pause the video again and translate the words from English to Spanish using the vocab sheet for help. Make sure that you're careful as to whether or not the words you're translating are singular or plural. And make sure that your definite articles match. Once you're done, restart the video and move on to los artículos indefinidos, or indefinite articles. We use los artículos indefinidos, or indefinite articles, to say a and an. And once again, they need to match the nouns that they're talking about in gender and number. To say a pen, we would say un bolígrafo. Some pens would be unos bolígrafos. If we were to say, a sheet of paper, I would say una hoja de papel. If I were to say some sheets of paper, it would be unas hojas de papel. Once again, pause the video and translate the words from Inglés to Español at the bottom of Página 3. Make sure that you're careful in terms of gender and number, that if the noun is feminine, you use the feminine indefinite article. Same with if the noun is masculine, you use a masculine indefinite article. And if the noun is plural, the indefinite article you use to say a, an, or some is also plural. Once you're done, pause the video, and we are going to finish up here with los adjetivos, and then how we recognize a Spanish verb. Adjectives in Spanish are a little different from adjectives in English, in that first off, they're usually after a noun. In English, we tend to place adjectives before a noun. We would say the boring class, the interesting movie, the smart students. However, in Spanish, the boring class would be la clase aburrida. The interesting movie would be la película interesante. The smart students would be los estudiantes inteligentes. So you'll notice that you have the adjective after the noun. Adjectives also, just like articles, have to have the same gender and number as the nouns they describe. And you also follow the same rules that you use to make nouns plural. So if an adjective ends with a vowel, A, E, I, O, or U, just add the letter S to make it plural. If it ends with a consonant, add the letters ES to make it plural. Pause the video one last time, and you are going to take a look at the 5 phrases, translate them from Inglés to Español, using the vocab sheet for assistance, as needed. Make sure that the articles, nouns, and adjectives all agree in gender and number. Once you're done, restart the video to take the last little bit of notes and complete the last activity. Finally, it's really important to know how we recognize a verb in Spanish. The first thing you need to know is that all verbs will end with the letters AR, AR, ER, AR, or IR, ER. And there are 2 specific types of verbs you need to be aware of. Regular verbs, in other words, the majority of the verbs, follow a set pattern. We always follow a set pattern to conjugate them. You'll learn one pattern to conjugate AR verbs that are regular, one pattern for regular ER verbs and one pattern for regular IR verbs in the present tense, and we'll get into this shortly in our review. Irregular verbs are different in that they follow their own set of rules. So while some irregular verbs are similar, you're definitely going to have to make sure that you learn some specifics in order to work with them all successfully. In fact, the very first verb we're going to work with specifically is one of the most irregular ones, gustar. We're going to give you the exception shortly before we give you the rest of the general rule. Now, what you're going to do here is on Página 5, look at the vocab list in the section that lists the regular verbs and the irregular verbs. You need to follow the instructions and write down the number of verbs specified in each column before you're finished. When you're done with everything, please let me know and I can come over and check your work. While you're waiting, please make sure that you are practicing on Quizlet or working on some of the other activities that are available to you. Muchas gracias, and please let me know if you need additional assistance.